and I'm about to show you my main secret trick, which I think plays a big part in integrating a character into a scene. Hello, and welcome to Art Adventures with Matt, where we overcome obstacles and slay big art problem monsters. In this episode, I've been set a quest by Lamitro in my quest log, aka the comments channel. Would love a tutorial on the techniques for drawing characters and environments and making them look like they're in said environment. Accept the quest? Yep. So pick up your backpacks, sharpen your digital pens, and let's get going on this adventure. In this episode, I'm going to be looking at how to bring a character into an environment and make it sit in that world realistically. So I'm going to take this guy here, who's kind of cartoony, and put them into several different environments and just show you my thought process of how I would integrate it in. So let's get into it straight away, and I'll talk through my process as I go through it. So the first environment I'm going to look at is this one here. A lot of green in it, a strong backlight source, and a lot of atmosphere. So what I will do is duplicate this guy. You might even start to think, oh, he's looking pretty good already. That's tutorial done. But no, there's a lot we want to do. I have a three-step process basically. First, I make sure the color grading's right, and the hue and saturation. And then I will integrate the lighting into the scene, so the lighting and the character are unified. And then finally I'll work on the edges to bring the environment into the character, not only bringing the character into the environment. So let's start with the first one. Normally what I do here is, there's a couple of methods I try out to see what works. You can simply start playing around with the color balance, bring in a bit more green, some of that yellow, play around, a bit of red maybe. That's already a good start. One of the hard things to do is to get the damn feet to look like they're not just pasted onto the earth. I was actually looking at Frank Frazetta recently and found out he had a big feet phobia as far as artwork went. It's an actual thing, but he came up with quite a few methods to quickly not have to deal with it. One of them is he simply brings in the color of the ground, like so, and fades that into the feet. And then, bam, not even worrying about it. You can keep a bit of the details there. This is a great way to ground your character into a scene. Just match it into the environment of the ground plane there, and suddenly he's become part of that ground plane. The next part we want to look at is making sure the hue, saturation, and values are right. I've got a hue and saturation level here. So the darks seem to match up already on this one. Hopefully on some of the other ones we'll have to have a play around with those environments. So let's quickly jump into the next scene, which is unifying the lighting. Got a strong backlight source here, and on my character I've got the light source coming from this way, which is going to be a bit weird because we want to tie it into, say, this guy on the rock back here. He's getting hit by the light along here. So what I'll start to do is paint in shadow and light just to tie it into the scene. And I can also do a trick that I quite enjoy doing. First of all, I'll just get rid of a bit of this girl in the background. Bam, 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 bam. Gone, 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 gone. And I like to bleed the light into the character, especially if it's a strong backlight. I've done it, say, here, and the light bleeds into the hair and it actually pushes over the character in certain other areas. So what we can start to do is color pick that very strong light source there and simply soft round brush it a little bit over the character himself, and basically just start to bleed that light source into the character there. We're going to want quite a strong edge lighting on him here. I'll roughly block out something to give you an idea. So get a hard round, and we can sort of start to push in. Obviously this edge light's way too strong at the moment. We'd play with that. Knock it back. Oh, I pushed the button I shouldn't have. And lost my edge light. Where'd you go? There you are. Knock that back. Smudge it in a bit. Cool. Now I'll probably go over with a soft, two ways to do it, soft multiplier layer, but sometimes I like just to duplicate the guy and do a hue saturation. Darken him up on this side, and I might even play a bit with the shadow, because this is now his shadow. And I might even play a bit with the color balance there to pick up the bounce lights. Greens and blues. Blues are good. And then I will just delete a lot of that guy. Delete a lot of the shadow layer. Painting in the light with basically my eraser. It's pretty dark, but it's alright because we're going to bring in some more light. Let's grab a bit of a color dodge. Always like to go with a dark brown for my color dodge. Just gets the best results, I find. And I'll select him. Let's paint in some light now. There we go. Oh, suddenly light's hitting him in all the right places. For this scene, the brown might even be a bit too much, as far as there's just a lot more yellow and reds in this scene. Hit the feet a little bit. Okay, he's already fitting in quite nicely. And then the third stage I like to do is hit these edges, because normally if you throw a character in, he's going to look quite cut out. So we don't want that, especially with hair. So I just like to, I'll basically flatten this all down, except for that guy. I'm going to flatten him down and play with the edges with a smudge tool. Now I have played around a lot with different brushes, and just you can do that too. Break up the edges, especially the hair. And I'm about to show you my main secret trick, which I think plays a big part in integrating a character into a scene. I'm not going to show it just yet, and I'll just sort this hair out. Break up some of these edges. Hard edges are cool, but you want to soften it a little bit so that a little bit of the environment comes in. and he doesn't feel so cut out. Creates a bit of movement in the character too. Okay, and so my little secret is to select the character, and then you just subtly color pick around him, and with a soft brush you just bring a bit of that into the character. If it's going to be too strong, I'll knock it back in a sec. But what it does is two things. It gives him a more 3D feel, less cut out, because it pushes back his, it rounds out his edges. See, what I should be doing is color picking where I start to play. Now I'll knock this back so it's not so obvious. And once you're down here in the ground, you might pick up some of these greens, bringing in this area in. Play with it. Don't leave it as just soft round, because soft rounds make everything look too smudgy and soft. But it's a good way to start to round that character out. Remember, this is a rush job. Now what I also want to do is I've got certain areas I want to push back a little bit further. Say these arrows here, they've got a lot of light streaming through them. I might just paint over the top of those, knock them back. I should have done that on a different layer, but I'll just softly erase some of that out. Okay, and I'll show you, it'll come out more obvious than others, but you can already see he looks a lot more 3D rather than that flat cutout character that we had. And you just play with the levels to get that right. Another very quick method is to just grab a color that basically sums up the atmosphere of the place and chuck it on top and really knock it down to about 5-10%, and that brings in a lot of the atmosphere and color. It's lit up my feet too much and they're looking separate from the ground again, so I'll just get rid of there, keep it grounded. Might have some of the elements that are closer to the eye still poking through this atmosphere. And yeah, it's a pretty quick integration into the scene. Feeling that guy? Let's try another scene and go through the same method. So I shall grab another copy of him. I will put him beside just to see if it's obvious how much better it is. Hopefully a lot. Yeah, one's cut out, plonked in. One's really started to tie into the environment there. Right, what I want to do is get into this red environment. So let's shift these ladies out the way. Shift you. You can join her. So this very red environment is going to be a good test. It's got another strong backlight, so I can use a bit of that as well to push through his hair. So first let's get the color balance correct. We'll go color balance, lots of reds obviously, It's already making a nice difference. Bring in some yellows. And I think I've got a bit of purple in the shadows, so I'll just do a touch of that for now. Oh, he's already looking like he belongs. I'll get rid of this. Oh, where is she? Get rid of this female a bit in the background. Now we want to ground him to this environment. His feet are looking pretty dark, so we do the Frazetta method. It's good enough for him, it's good enough for me. Not quite working, so what I'm going to do is darken that whole area. So I'm going to darken his feet, but also darken that foreground with maybe a bit of a multiply. And knock that back to match the feet. It's probably going to need some work. That's going to get us a good start. Now there's a lot of this red flowing around in this scene. It's a very bounce light scene. So what I'm actually going to do is early on chuck in some of this color, and we'll go for here and knock that right back. See how it looks. See how the contrast is very strong here, but I can knock it back to pick up the environment there. And I don't want the strong highlights here. Even though there's a strong light, it's coming from the back. So he's already working again. Next stage is to unify the lighting with the scene. So we're going to do that little trick again, where we will just bring some of this backlight over the character. And then suddenly the character's reacting to the light. And then, of course, knock it back. I always like to go strong and then pull it back till it sets easily on the eye. So we'll break up that soft shadow a bit. Cool. Another way to integrate him in the scene, I can't quite do it with these two, is to, of course, put his shadows in the scene by stretching out a longer shadow here. And another way too is to bring in foreground elements, and this creates the illusion that he's always been in this scene. So here I might grab part of this foreground, maybe make it even darker, and have some sort of branch. Let's use this flowing ink brush here. Say have a, this is not going to look good composition wise, but yeah, you might just put something like that in. Something way cooler though, maybe have some of those red leaves sticking off it. Now let's play third stage, sort out these edges. I'm just wondering if I should knock back this lighting a bit, but it's kind of working. Still shows the face. We can just pretend there's some nice bounce lights hitting the face. So to knock out the edges again, you select your character and just bring in some of that environment. Oh, is he selected? He's not. Why aren't you selected? Oh, because that's that's the wrong guy, Matt. He's down here. Okay. Okay. And get the soft round. Start to bring that in. round them out a bit. Let the environment in. See, I think that's quite a good philosophy, is some people are like, how do I get my character into the environment? But you can also ask yourself, how do you get your environment into your character? And see how we've got this stronger yellow, orange yellow over this side. Bring that in too, which is actually very strong. So we'll have to knock that back a bit. And I like to play with his whiskers here. And picking up some of this stuff. And you don't have to do a hard select there of the character. Sometimes it's nice to bleed both the environment and him into a scene, so you might throw in just a bit of this. And that way they're both getting slightly touched by it. Oh, that's far too strong, that guy. Okay, and then we'll kick it back a bit. Don't like what I've done with the hair here, so knock that right, knock that right back. And also I should be breaking up the hair and the edges as well a little bit, because hair likes to be hairy. And yeah, sometimes I like to go a bit rough with it and really break up those edges so that they sit. And there, isn't it? He looks like he belongs in that scene, right? I think so. It's another quickie. And then the last one I'll show you is this guy here, mainly because this is a low light situation without a strong light source. But you can do the same thing. You still establish that there's a lighting style in this scene, but it's going to be quite different. It's going to be not so obvious. And there's a lot of atmosphere in this scene as well. So he's going to look really cut out and placed in at the moment. So I've got myself a challenge here. How are you going to do it, Matt? Well, first of all, let's color balance them in to bring in those blues, especially this light blue, I think. See, that's still not working. Let's get in there. No need for purples or greens. You can, of course, also play with the highlights. I find shadows in these just too much usually, and hardly ever use the shadow. Oh, but that one worked. Okay, now if you do a test, you'll see my contrast here is too strong. Let's chuck on this layer here, the blacks and everything. So I need to knock that back to fit into this scene, which is perfect because all I have to do is pick up, say, this color here, and suddenly he is starting to belong. And that's really what low light is about. It's knocking back the highlights and the shadows because there's just light everywhere bouncing around, but no pure obvious light source, even though there's a little bit of light source in the back here where the sun's high up in the sky. But when you have to consider lighting for low light sources, just think there's hardly going to be any cast shadows. There's going to be a lot of form shadows. We're definitely going to be hitting the edges on the sky too, like I have done here, to bring in the atmosphere. Okay, so this is looking good. What's my next step? I've unified the lighting basically. So it's going to be a lot of edge playing. Oh, and these feet. let's Frazetta them. I should find a few examples. If you just look up Frazetta hates feet, you'll see he really does, which is good because it's one of the hardest things to make look natural in a scene, I find. And again, I'm going to ground him a bit by painting in, maybe I'll pick up that colour there, painting it into the environment too. Better. Needs a lot of edge work, this guy. See, I might even knock back this highlight here because this is a lot of contrast, which can be easily done. You just, again, pick up some of this stuff and let's just soft brush it. Ooh. I'm still going to do that, but maybe hit the multiplier. I'm still on layer. Sorry, amateur hour. Boom. Might actually just delete some of it to keep his eyes and nose as a focal point. Okay, let's get into these edges. Flattening that down. Here definitely needs to become hairy. Break up some of these edges here, especially down here. Oh look, he's got some hair on his feet. We can play with that. Here we go. You're doing great, little hobbit guy. And then select him and just bring in the environment again. The further stuff's away from the camera, you can really cheat depth by pushing it back. Say, but this cloak here is behind this bow. You can really knock that back. Oops, what am I doing? Why are you moving? Opacity. Keep it subtle. Of course, again, way too strong, but we're gonna knock it back. Now, I find this method here is the best way of stopping stuff looking cut out, which is one of the major problems of plonking a character into a scene. You can even play with the depth by doing it on the face. I'm going to try to keep it really subtle. Just pushing back here. Yeah, so let's have a look at those values again. Fits in much nicer there. That's basically my three-step method. Three-step method. Color balance. That color balance includes making sure that contrast and brightness and values match the scene. Second step is lighting unified across character and environment. You can also throw in shadows, cast shadows if there's a strong light source coming from here. You might cast strong shadows there, have him casting shadows across his body, stuff like that. And finally, hit those edges, knock them back let them blend in and bleed a little bit into the environment. And that should give you characters that fit into your worlds. And it's just, ta-da, red lady. Okay, that's that quick tutorial. I hope it helped. Thank you for watching, and leave some comments below if there's questions you still have, stuff that doesn't make sense, or other tutorials you'd like to see. Thank you. So that was our first quest successfully completed. If you've got a big ugly art monster that needs slaying, drop me a quest down in the quest log below, and together we'll go sort it out. Also, check out my other videos. They follow my art process as I create a fantasy world known as Winter's Edge. Cheers!